Happy Friday, everybody. Hope you all had a great week. Welcome to the TDR Traded Black podcast. I am your host, Shad Dale's big podcast here today as we do some technical analysis approaches. We welcome in the chart master, of course, Dan the chart man, as he breaks down some of the companies he's watching and why. We'll take a look back at the week that was just had, and more importantly, what you can anticipate in the week ahead in the crypto, cannabis, and psychedelic space. So this should be a good one. Leave your comments and questions below. We'll try to get to as many as possible as we ask those questions to Dan as he breaks us down all the technical charts that you want to learn more. And as I said, what we can anticipate heading into the new week. So let's welcome in TDR co-host Anthony Varrell. Anthony, good to see you. Saw quite a little close.
What's going on?
Yeah. Some of the crypto stocks that trade on the NASDAQ. We saw an interesting close, to say the least, but we'll get into that with Dan. I love the sweater. I love the sweater, bud. Yeah,
this my sweater strategy is just wear it when no one's expecting it. So it's I'll keep it consistent from time to time. But no, it was great. Cannabis got a bid going into the afternoon. A lot of the names ended up in the green. A lot of the better names ended up in the green. Yeah. I think MSOX round tripped about 20%. Today peaked or trough to peak. So, I mean, it's good. I mean, Friday, everybody thought that something was going to happen with the options expiry and we'd get some price action to the upside. And that's exactly what happened.
No better person to bring in after a week that was just had as we bring in the chart master here in this industry, Dan, the chart man. First time to the podcast. Good to see you, sir. How are things?
Thanks for having me. Things are great.
Yeah, good to see you, man. You are one of the OGs, the cannabis space. Before we got going, 2010, 2011 is when you got started?
October 2010, yeah.
Wow. Man, when you look back at those days, how'd you keep busy throughout the day? What were you looking at back then?
Oh, I was in fundamental analysis mode. I was looking up CEOs and what they were doing 6 years ago, and I was just an investigative journalist, like just trying to solve the puzzle and figure out what was going on.
Well, listen, a big thank you for what you've done for this industry. I know a lot of people have a ton of respect for you. It's pretty incredible what you've done. You've built a YouTube channel of over 180,000 subscribers, over 60,000 followers on Twitter. So congrats to you. I know you're a wealth of knowledge. And hey, if you're going to get an audience, you got to be good. And you're definitely good at like charts. But before I get into some of the technical analysis that you want to break down, we look at cannabis, psychedelics, and crypto. There's a lot of speculation, excitement pertaining these three verticals and how we could see a lot of growth pertaining to all three here in 2024. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, risk reward, these are the places to be looking, and especially people that have small accounts. When I started back in 2010, had a real small account. If you're looking for the most bang for your buck, it's definitely these places, especially when there's laws involved and the government and things shifting and changing in that regard.
Yeah, that's for sure. And we could see a lot of that happen at some point this year, fingers crossed. So without further ado, let's jump into it. And we'll first start with the cannabis industry and we find out some of the companies you're watching and why. So first up, let's look at, I think we have Curaleaf up for the first chart and we'll bring that up right now. So I'll hand it over to you. And then feel free, anybody out there, to ask any questions pertaining to some of the feedback that Dan's providing. And we'll go from there. But over to you, Dan.
Sure. So with the daily chart here, every candle representing one day, we obviously just want an uptrend if you are bullish. And every single time we establish a new base of support, that is now the most important level to us. And the good news about today is the low of today is now a very important level going forward. And it's almost like it gives us clarity where we can say, we can point to a level and say, all right, this is now our line in the sand level, where if we're going to keep a strong daily uptrend, Curaleaf, the low today, 446. So I mark up my chart, put a line right there. That's our new higher low. That's the stair step pattern of an uptrend. And we have that new higher low. So if we want to make a simple statement heading into next week, for the bulls to keep full control of this daily uptrend, if we hold 446, we're just fine. And that also tells us if we lose 446, we have a little red light flash off in our brain and say, okay, things are shifting a bit and bulls are losing their short-term control. So this was a really good way to end the week in the sense that it gives us clarity into next week. And of course, in terms of resistance, the recent highs are the levels that we're looking at. And we're looking up at 515 right now on Curaleaf. And just, roughly looking at it, we could say we're 43 cents above support and we are 26 cents below resistance. So we're closer to resistance than support. And we'll see if the bulls can keep this momentum going from today into next week. There's certainly a lot of euphoria in the stock market as a whole today. And that's, helping the cannabis sector as well.
But Dan, so one thing that I guess the cannabis sector gets a knock on is and liquidity. When you're looking at these stocks, do you take RSI into account with the underlyings from MSOS at all?
I will, yeah. It's got to be, the RSI is useful in a strong trending market. And so if you've got a strong uptrend, you use short-term oversold conditions to make entries, to look for those longer-term higher lows. And so, Curaleaf didn't quite get to hourly oversold. That's a good thing. But, I do keep an eye on it. You can see, the last 2 times that Curaleaf has gotten hourly oversold has led to some pretty decent bounces off the lows there. So it's just one little piece of the puzzle, but I do love RSI as an indicator in strong trending markets.
Okay. All right. Next up, let's now shift to Terrascend, another big multi-state operator of the U.S.
So full disclosure, I have a little bit of Terrascend in my IRA, and that's from back, pre when it changed its listings in Canada. It had a lot of relative strength leading up into that, and that's what got my attention. But again, same thing. So just marking these higher lows every point where we set that new support and then see continuation. And so the bulls are hoping that today 182 is that new support level. And we need to see the bulls head up, break the high of today on Monday, ideally. And that resistance of 216 a little bit further away. At this point, we are 10% from that level. But as we know that the tier 2, tier 3 names, they have a lot more volatility in both directions. So there's nothing unusual about that. You need that volume to pick back up. And you can see we're not really seeing the volume today. This orange line down here is the 20-period average volume. So what you want to see is the green days, you want more than that, and the red days, you want less than that. And so the green day today, not putting up a lot of volume. So that's something that, you would want to see the bulls start to bring that volume. And if you look at, MSOS, which we'll look at in just a moment, we saw that it had an uptick in volume today as the bulls stepped in and bought the dip from the morning.
Yeah.
With these two stocks, I mean, these are obviously outliers as Curaleaf and Terrascend have uplisted to the TSX. Do you see anything different in the trading activity or in the price action in these stocks as compared to their peers that are on the CSE or the OTC?
I don't, but I'm also, I'm a bit zoomed out in the sense that I'm watching MSOS as my primary, and I'm comparing everything to the ETF MSOS. So I'm not watching each individual name and the bid and the ask on a daily basis. So I would say that I'm not fully looking for it, but, just from a zoomed out level, I don't really see a whole lot of a difference.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello to everybody out there. Jeff writes us, we review Verano. Yes, we will in a moment. John Verville, good to see you. Happy Friday. Sweater, hoodies on its way. Next up, let's bring up Advisor Shares ETF, MSOs, the behemoth of the industry. Dan.
Yeah. So like I said, this one for me is the one that I keep an eye on, and not a huge volume day, but very low volume the past 2 days, which again is a good sign. If you're consolidating, you want it to be on lower volume. And bulls would love to see the green volume. Again, this is, we got, just looking back the last couple of weeks, all higher than average volume here, another one here. And you can see the red days are lower than that average again, which is exactly what bulls want to see. So no red flags. The key for me, again, same thing, low of today, key level 770 is now a must hold level next week for the bulls to keep full control. We know we got our resistance 905, but the key for me is going to be this 988 level. Everybody is watching this, and I'm sure you've all seen it. There's an uptick on social media the last 2 weeks with a lot of bigger accounts getting interested for the first time. And what they're looking at, technically speaking, is this basing out pattern. This is the monthly time frame. So long term, we know it's been a brutal pullback, and now we're basing out and trading sideways. And the way I often describe that is, again, we're just talking supply and demand. Yeah. And this is where on the way down, supply is outweighing demand very significantly. And now the scales are doing this. And so then we're looking for the scales to flip where demand starts to exceed supply. And it's really that 988 level. If we break 988, we can say a lot of things. This is the first monthly uptrend in the history of the stock or the ETF as far as a higher low and a higher high. We had a nice run when we first listed here, but as far as higher low and higher high, we've got to get over 988. So I would be surprised if we could do it without news. it would require, in my opinion, the broader stock market just continuing in blue sky breakout euphoria. And that's possible that's enough confidence where everybody, what happens when you have the stock market as strong as it is right now is people are just looking around at what hasn't run yet. Where can I put my money to work? I don't want to buy NVDA up at 600 almost. It's been running wild. I want to find the things that haven't run yet. Yeah. So that's why it's almost like bottom of the barrel fishing here. And so MSOS got to hold 770 to start next week, and breaking 905 would be great, but it's 988 that is the level.
So is that when price discovery starts to happen and things start to get fun? If we break that 988 level, that you start to see it really
opens
break
things
out?
up. It opens things up. The next major zone that we're looking at is this 1382 to 1460 range. Okay. Once we get over, 30% upside follow through. That's when you don't need news. That's when just the technicals alone get people interested, and that's when that momentum can coast a little bit.
You think that'll happen at some point this year?
I do, definitely, yes. I'm not holding my breath for the news. I know a lot of people have this hurry up and wait, short-term mindset in terms of a DEA decision. I'm ready for it any day, but I'm also ready for it to take 3 months, and we just have to keep in mind and be really patient that there's going to be 20% swings in both directions very easily in the absence of news. So we have to keep our eyes on the prize. And, one thing that I keep saying to everybody is if you're, trying to be a little bit more active trading, have your accounts broken up so you have a longer term position that you keep, psychologically, you've got to differentiate. And, so I have a position where I'm not selling this position until we get a DEA decision. And that's a very clear cut way of going about things.
We had Dan, go ahead, Anthony.
Go ahead. I was going to say, I got in on Tuesday. I picked up about 3,000 shares in MSOS. So, I'm in starting to position myself, but that's about 20% of what I want to go in on this time around. So I'm looking for pullbacks to get in, but that's going to be a core that I just accumulate and then wait for the DEA to come in and then probably come off of it then.
Yeah. We had Dan Aeriz on last week, and he's like, history is going to repeat itself from what we saw in September. You're going to see, like in a lot of cases, the tier 2 and tier 3 companies outperform the bigger MSOs 2-1, 3-1 back in September. And he's like, if we do get news, we're probably going to see in the short term a lot of the same trends as to what happened a couple of months ago, but we shall wait and see. Okay, next up, we got Florida giant Trulieve that we want to break down those charts.
Yeah, so same deal, low of today, and actually we're a bit closer to the high of the week than other names, so that's a good sign. But that new support 615 must hold level, and if we get over $7, we're looking up at 780 as a key. And this is one that has been lagging behind a little bit. I always divide by the ETF, so TCNNF divided by MSOS, and this helps us determine relative strength or weakness. And for me, it'll be notable when Trulieve gets over cent mark, and once it does, we'll be able to say Trulieve is the strongest it's been compared to MSOS in the last 7 or 8 months, and that will be a notable shift that takes place. So I would suggest,
is that part of your is that part of your analysis that you're actually comparing on a relative strength basis the underlyings to the ETF as they're trading as an indicator?
And that's something I picked up in the crypto world in 2017, 2018, where I was comparing altcoin Bitcoin and just getting that comparative analysis down, and it's almost like an extra layer of in-depth looking under the hood.
So you're almost using MSOS as to develop the Bitcoin dominance metric in the sector, but for cannabis.
Exactly. And so we've had pretty slick. We've had Green Thumb showing relative strength for years at this point, and we've had, Cresco showing relative weakness for years. And so that just helps us in terms of, if I want to look at an individual company, you could do your fundamental analysis. As you should be aware of balance sheets and all that, but this is a key aspect of it as well.
Yeah. So
if that metric flips on, let's say, a Cresco, that's like, all right, it's time to take this seriously and watch what the name is about to do. Because that's I wouldn't say a leading indicator, but that's a major indicator that something's going to change in the pattern of the stock.
Yeah, it tells you when there's a shift underway. Absolutely.
Okay.
All right, let's answer Jeff's question. Let's focus on Verano Holdings.
So Verano is a bit different in the sense that we lost a little support level here. We can see this low from the 10th. Granted, we didn't get any follow through, but every other name that we've looked at, it's a very clear daily uptrend with higher lows and higher highs. And this just is, a testament of the less liquid name where, a little bit of dollar volume goes a long way. And so we did take out that level. And just as a comparison, if MSOS had been that weak and had done the same thing, we would have broken 704. So I can see that it's just a little bit weaker in that regard. But we can say there's now a base down there at, let's see, 450, 461. So yeah, I don't love that level broke personally, but we recovered. So key resistance is 556 from here. You can see this is a little bit of a double top from back on the HHS reaction, where we topped out at 550, actually 3 tops there. So 550, and then 556. So bulls really want to clear that level and turn it into support. It's a very clear resistance wall. When you got resistance that is that clear, bears will play against it as long as it's resistance. And then you got to flip that into support and then start holding it as support if you're going to see a shift there. So I would say if you are a bull in Verano, you want to see 550 start to act as a wall of support, but still a battle looming there.
So this is performing a little bit different than the others. And you said just a less liquid name. Is that what you refer to it as?
Yeah, definitely a factor. You look at, again, I'm not specifically watching the bid and the ask every day, but I'm just looking at the volume here, 500,000. So we'll say $2.5 million traded. And obviously that's a lot less than, the volume and liquidity are two different things, but they're often hand in hand. And so, it's just those names. When I describe things as a technical analyst, I say the most likely scenario. And the way that I derive that statement is through experience, just, looking at 10,000 charts and just over and over again. And something that is less liquid, the less likely scenario happens more often because it's easier for a little bit of dollar volume to go a long way and move things. So I don't, if I'm a bull, I don't love that daily support was lost, but it's also, I'm sitting here as a trader. I have a minimum where I have a rule. I won't trade anything that doesn't have at least $5 million a day. And that's just a rule of mine because I've graduated from the penny stock world, a decade ago, and I want to leave that behind. But this is just an example where, if I'm being very strict about my support and stop losses and things, this is an example where I could get wicked out. And then, of course, we come right back up again. And so something being less liquid, as you mentioned, if we get a headline, I do believe that the tier 2 and tier 3 will outperform because it's, because of that lack of liquidity, you get everybody rushing in one direction at the same time. It really propels it a lot further. So it works both ways. A lack of liquidity is detrimental on the way down, but it's beneficial on the way up.
And one of the things that we see in cannabis world is, the bid ask, the spreads are not really tight. How does that play into your analysis? Like, does it affect any of the metrics or the indicators that you're looking at to a pretty firm degree?
It honestly, it means I won't. That's why I'm trading MSOS because it's more liquid. My style of trading as a day trader primarily, I'm doing a lot of market orders because when I want in, I want in now, and when I want out, I want out now. And I can't do that with these OTC names. And so that's, everybody talking about uplisting and things like that. And we saw it with the Canadian names. Once they uplisted, the amount of dollar volume that they started to see was just exponential.
Right.
And it's because, I'll only trade X dollars on GTBIF right now. If you uplist and if you tighten up that bid and ask spread and you give me more dollar volume, I'll trade with 5 times as much dollar volume on the day. And you'll see that volume pick up in a big way because, I'm one person, magnify that by, 10,000 plus of other traders that are very similar mindset.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why, despite Canopy and Tilray being Canadian LPs and having direct leverage to the US, I've always had the opinion they'll trade as a proxy to the US on cannabis news simply because of the liquidity that's in those names, and people will go into them first, whether we believe they're cannabis companies or not. They're going to catch a bid, and that liquidity is there.
Absolutely,
for people to trade in and trade out of.
Yep. And that's, for me, let's say the news hits right now. I'm market buying MSOS. I'm market buying maybe one individual name, and then I am going to trade I would go to the Canadian names for that exact reason.
Dan, do you find the quality of your life has improved since leaving the penny stock world behind?
Definitely. But I mean, honestly, the lessons that I've learned there, they've helped me prevent from bag holding in this sector, and
I bet.
They've helped me adopt a mindset where this is all just flashing numbers in cyberspace. And, you get the people that are fundamentally based, and that concept is so foreign to them. And I understand why.
Yeah.
But I know for me, protecting my capital, having the mindset that it can be gone in a flash, really helps me be extra protective. And I've certainly learned all the lessons, and, Chinese penny stock halted overnight, lose my entire position. I learned it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. I bought RSX, or the Russia ETF, when the Russia-Ukraine skirmish came out, and I was looking at the last time Crimea happened, the Russian ETF got blocked, halted trading, but then 10x'd once everything was once everything was clear. This time they just wound down the ETF altogether, and I lost my entire principal, which is the last time I will do that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a question though. I'm assuming you're using stop losses a lot of the times in your trades. Is there a certain percentage that you kind of use as like the gold standard, or is it like a case by case basis how you're feeling about a certain name and how it's acting?
It's case by case, and my position size will be determined by it. For example, if I'm playing off of a support level that's right nearby, let's say, I've got 2% before I would stop out. I can use twice the position size than if it were a 4% risk, and it's the same dollar risk. And so I generally will look for plays near support to allow for a bit more position sizing. But yeah, it's very much case by case. Something like my position in, what am I in? Terrascend. I'll have a way more wiggle room. It's a smaller position size, but way more wiggle room than I'll let like MSOS have.
Huh. Okay. Last one I want to touch on, which is basically considered the blue chip stock of the industry, Green Thumb Industries. Fire away, sir.
Yeah. So just to compare GTPIF divided by MSOS, again, just to show you that this has shown, if this chart's going up, it means we are strong compared to MSOS. And we just a few weeks ago hit the all-time highs in terms of the strongest it's been. So same thing, low of today is now a key level for me into the start of next week. And 1196 is that level. And bulls want to get over that 1357. You can see we already pretty significantly cleared the HHS high. And then you have the other names that we've looked at that are still struggling to get over that level. So just another metric showing that relative strength. And the next major hurdle will be 1650 if we can break that recent high. But yeah, it definitely is getting the reputation as far as just its performance, its relative strength. And, that tells me that larger players are positioning in this name. I'm making some assumptions, but that relative strength, that doesn't just happen. That happens because the demand is certainly more so than other individual names.
Yeah. I'm really curious to see how much upside this particular company and stock has long term, because everybody views it obviously as the leader, but we'll see how the industry expands and grows, right?
Yeah.
One last thing I wanted to bring up. There's been a few people here. I don't know if you're able to bring this chart up, but we've had quite a few people ask about none other than Aeriz Wellness. Do you want to bring that up real quick?
What is it?
AYRWF.
All right. So low of today, look at this. So high of the last 3 days, that clearly stands out as a key short-term resistance. So high of Wednesday, 310, yesterday, 310, today, 310. So clearly somebody's sitting at 310 and selling some shares there, and bears playing off that level. But 266 key support. So bulls now want to maintain that level, set the daily high or low. And if we can't clear 310, we're not going very far. So first thing next week, that's the level the bulls want to take out. After 310 is 347, and it is a name that did clear the HHS high recently, so that's a good sign. Curious, I haven't compared this one to MSOS.
I'd have to guess it's probably trading weaker.
It's been range bound, but it's up. It's upper range. If we can clear this 38, 37 level, then we can say that, it's the strongest it's been in over a year. I love the statements when I look at a chart and say, this hasn't happened in X amount of time, because it tells me something is shifting. And so this would be a good one where, we are close to being the strongest it's been in something like 13 months. So that would be a great sign if we clear that level.
All right. We could be here all day. I got so many people asking me about more and more cannabis stocks. They're like Canopy, MariMed, all these companies, but Cresco is another one. We'll try to get to at that or some of those charts towards the end. But let's shift now to crypto. And I know it had quite the close, to say the least, here today. So first up, I think we're going to look at Marathon Digital Holdings, which trades on the NASDAQ under the ticker symbol MARA. Fire away, sir.
Yeah, I've been trading this one extremely actively in both directions. As a day trader, pretty much the last 6 weeks, you sit down at the computer and you think you got to do all this analysis and find these plays. For me, it's just, I know there's going to be volatility in MARA. I don't know if it's going to be up or down. I need to, sit down at the computer for 10 minutes and gauge, where I think things stand in the short term. But I know this name's going to bring the volatility. So it's a great day trader. And also, you want to talk fees. If I were to trade crypto on Coinbase the way that I trade these stocks day trading, I'd be spending tens of thousands of dollars in fees, and you don't have fees in the US in most brokers. So there's definitely a lot of people like me that are trading these names instead of trading crypto. But as far as the short term, I'm looking for a temporary bottom. And we have a bullish reversal candle today. Still work to be done. You need an hourly trend change. So it's a nice bounce. It's giving the bulls space to work with. But next time we pull back, we got to hold the low of today and then confirm that hourly uptrend. And if we get that, we go to the daily chart. I'm looking for a move to the even a weak bounce would get us to maybe $18, $19 range or so. So I do actually, full disclosure, have a bit of a position from today that I set a bid and went out to lunch, and it got filled right at the low and took a little bit of profit to be comfortable, especially with Bitcoin trading over the weekend. And these names, obviously, we're not trading them over the weekend, but looking for at least a temporary bottom here to try and see a relief bounce, considering we just dropped almost 50%. And 50% drop in 6 days. So bear exhaustion for sure.
Yeah.
That was an aggressive drop in that name. I've been watching. I'm sure we're going to talk Coinbase, but I've been watching Coinbase to get back in. I got out at like 155 after I got in 87, and I mean that thing just was a freight train.
Yeah, well,
to the upside.
Let's segue into Coinbase now.
So Coinbase, I'm on the weekly time frame, and this is something we call a stair step. And any concept that I say, if you don't understand it, if you pretty much Google chart guys and that phrase, you'll find a video on it. So chart guys stair step will bring up what this is all about, but it's just a higher low every single week. We lose that pattern at 169. That marks the top. Sometimes, trading is not easy, but there are some times where you look back at something and say, well, duh. And that's one of them. You break the pattern of a higher low every single week, and everything shifted from that point. And so now we're at a pattern of a lower high every single week. And the most common pattern here will be an equilibrium, where you see a significant volatility in one direction, significant volatility in the other direction. And then you just tighten up and you look for that range to tighten up. And that's essentially what MSOS is doing right now. After the HHS reaction, you shoot up, you give a ton back, and now we're just tightening up within that range for a long time. And so I'm looking for Coin to give us a weekly higher low sometime in the next week or so. It's trying the reversal candle, same as MARA. Same thing, we need that hourly trend change. So we need to see that clear higher low and higher high on Monday for some bounce follow through. And then the key resistance will be 137.31, which was the high of Thursday. But again, after the magnitude of this drop, I am scouting these long entries. And also the question is going to be, can Bitcoin hold 40,000, which is going to have significant short-term implications on these crypto stocks.
Interesting. Last one to bring up is the behemoth, obviously, Bitcoin.
So yeah, it's all about 40,000. I mean, we've held it between 40 and 41. We've held it so many times that's the level everybody's watching. I say it's a level you can see from space, because any kind of trader is looking at that level as the must hold. And I'm not convinced it's going to hold. I was actually looking today for it to potentially flush. Oftentimes you'll see a little climax low or high be breaking a key psychological level. And so I was watching today to, flush under 40,000, trigger some stop losses, and then V-shape back up. And we didn't quite get there, but we've got same thing. We need the hourly trend change now. So we topped out on the bounce, got to hold the low, and it's up to the bulls on the low volume weekend to prove to us that this low of 40,000 can hold. And really, as long as we're under 43.6 thousand, bulls aren't going to be proving much to us. And I use these. Go ahead.
I was going to say, are you surprised at all on how the industry has performed since last week's announcement from the SEC? No?
No, it's for me, anytime news is known, I look for it to be sell the news. And I know, this time could be different and things like that, but I've just seen it so many times. I mean, the best part of the reason I'm on this show right now is because I sold the news of the Canadian MJ sector, and I gained a reputation by, giving the warnings. This is a known event. We're running insanely into this event. And we all know how that turned out. So I highly suggest, getting familiar with the psychological aspect of markets and news. Again, same thing. If you Google chart guys, sell the news, or is it priced in? There's a whole video talking about that kind of mindset and approach to the market. But it was just, too much euphoria heading into a known event. And at this point, I'm looking, if you want to talk long-term, this is the 6-month chart. And I'm open to it being a pretty boring first half of 2024, where we pull back a little bit, find some support in the mid to lower 30,000s, and just tighten up a lot of 2024. And
so have you noticed Bitcoin trading differently in the last couple of weeks since the introduction of the ETF? For instance, like the weekdays versus the weekend,
I have not.
With the ETFs having to settle at the market.
No, I have not yet. The weekends generally are really what the pattern has been over the last couple of months is Bitcoin is really slow and sideways on the weekends, but the altcoins get their chance to move, and traders look for the altcoins. But no, I haven't noticed. Again, this price action for me personally is not surprising. And I was exiting positions into the move up, just anticipating at least a temporary top. So I'm just going to be interested in reloading some positions, but ideally I'd like that to be in the mid 30,000s. Whether I get that or not remains to be seen. We should know within the next couple of days. I'd say probably by Monday, whether or not this $40,000 level has a high probability of holding or not.
So you think slow growth for Bitcoin in the first 6 months of 2024?
I just saw way too much euphoria. And whenever I see that much euphoria and that many people talking about how insane a year it's going to be, it just sets this thing off. It's just 100. Exactly. Same thing. Yeah. It just sets this thing off in my brain that says, be cautious, because the probability that all these retail traders are going to be right is not very high. So, I think max pain might be a sideways tightening range for a while. And that there's nothing wrong with that. You got to build supports on the way up on the longer term timeframes. Bitcoin's last monthly higher low was down at 25,000. So, we need another monthly higher low at some point. Let's get it out of the way.
Before we get into our last stock, which is in the psychedelic space, good question. Once your stop loss hits, stock rebounds, do you ever re-enter intraday?
Yes, but this took, this was probably year 8 into my trading journey. And also this is on the similar thread is looking in the opposite direction. If I'm looking long and I stop out and, the price tells me I'm wrong, flipping and shorting right after that in the other direction. Those are both things that required for me a ton of experience before I had any kind of confidence to be able to pull those off. Because the last thing you want to do is stop out and jump right back in and stop out. And, you're just banging your head against the wall at that point. But essentially for me, it's if my thesis is not invalidated, then, like, for example, if I'm looking for an hourly higher low and I'm buying into consolidation, but I stop out, but it's a wick and then we go right back up. Well, then that might be a falling wedge. A falling wedge is defined by bear exhaustion, where you break with zero follow through. And so, if the criteria of my thesis is still valid, I'll give it another attempt, as long as, I have a level where if I hit this much of a dollar loss on the day, I'm done. But if I stop out and it's only my half day loser level, then I've still got some capital to play with. And there's other things that come into play. If I had a really good week and I'm sitting on a lot of profit, I'll be a little bit more aggressive or things like that.
Yeah. Great question, Manny. Another question: will weed stocks outperform crypto this year?
I was talking about on Twitter, for me, the best trade that I've ever done in my life was selling 2017 crypto euphoria and loading Canadian cannabis for the 2018 run. And, I was looking around a couple of weeks ago and saying, is this setting up again where we see the ETF euphoria temporary top, maybe Bitcoin gets boring for a bit here, and now a lot of resurgence in interest in cannabis. And, if you sold the ETF and bought MSOS that day, so far, that's the right trade to be in. So I am just the fact that, Bitcoin's run, 200% from the low already. Yeah. For me, that's just, risk reward would dictate. And also the looming headline. If we get the DEA rescheduling headline, I think that, we see a really easy 50, 100% quick move. And I don't think Bitcoin has a really easy 50 to 100% quick move looming on the horizon.
Yeah, when we saw in September there was a rally. What was it? 3 weeks? 4 weeks? Do you like?
3.
Was it 3 weeks? Do you anticipate the same?
3 weeks, and then we round tripped.
Yeah.
Back
so
to the.
Do you think that happens again? That if and when the rescheduling announcement does get announced, that we see like a short run of like 2-3 weeks again, and then everything comes round trip? Or what's your thought on that?
Honestly, the biggest factor for me is what is the price action leading into the announcement. For example, if we get the announcement right now, we're going to fly through 9 and 988, and we'll get a lot of follow through. Yeah. But if it drags on for a month and the price trends up, let's say the broader market stays strong, let's say we keep a bit of an uptrend and we're trading at $10.30 a month from now, it's going to diminish a little bit of the oomph behind the headline announcement.
Gotcha. Okay, good to know. All right, last up, psychedelic space trades on the New York Stock Exchange, Cybin. And they had some interesting press releases back before Christmas. They've got quite the IP going for them, and they've got some pretty heavy hitters when it comes to investing in this company. But what are you seeing?
It's the bulls really need some help here, just because we had the nice pump, but it's been a fade since then, and so we've got the clear weekly lower highs. Right now, I can say as long as 45 cents is resistance, the bears have full control here on the weekly time frame, and we're just fading back down towards the base of support from the upper 20s, 27, 28, and just bulls struggling to catch a bid here. And so I would say the most important levels for me are 27.5 support and 45 resistance. And as long as neither of those levels are breaking, not a whole lot is changing. Honestly, I like CMPS setup, technically speaking, a little bit better for the possibility that I'll just show you. But what CMPS has is a very clear long-term downtrend resistance line here. And if we can hold, we need to see the bulls show up right about now. But if we can back test these EMAs and get over 1018, then bulls show us a significant shift. And again, I can look at this chart and say, if that were to happen, I can say that things are changing for the first time in almost a year and a half. And so in terms of, what's required, CMPS needs how much to get that very clear technical shift. We would need a move of, it's a lot, 33%. Whereas CYBN, to get to the recent highs, we need 100 whatever percent, 120%. For me, it's if anything, it's a penny stock, and this goes back to my history. Is it's almost like I definitely am a little bit harder on them in the sense like prove it. You earn my money. Prove to me that I should have my money in you as a penny stock. And CYBN, as long as we keep setting these weekly lower highs, bulls aren't proving anything to us.
Interesting. Sagita writes, psychedelic stocks are way too early at this part of the regulatory calendar. Do you agree?
It definitely could be, because if you don't get that headline that gets the attention, then it's slow bleed. Absolutely.
Yeah. Did you see that news? So like 2 weeks ago, MAPS announced the $100 million oversubscribed Series A financing. They obviously submitted their NDA before Christmas for their MDMA protocol that they hope to get approval from the FDA at some point here in 2024. But did you get a chance to see that press release, and did you review it at all?
I did not, and I'm glad you're bringing it up because it lets us know the dates that we should be paying attention. So when did you mention that was coming to a head potentially?
I've heard rumors that, no one really knows at the end of the day, but if I was speaking to a couple of people last night that follow the space closely, if they had to speculate, they think at some point in Q3, but they had phase 3 data that came out in the fall. They just raised, MAPS did, and it was very, very compelling to say the least. And a lot of people that follow the space closely are looking at not an if, but a matter of when this gets approved. And there's some very sophisticated investors that were part of that Series A round. But it's I think if the FDA were to approve, it definitely brings this industry to a whole new level where it's not just viewed as a recreational drug, so to speak, industry. This is actually real. The data is real, and this is actually going to help people with certain mental health conditions.
Yeah, I mean both of these sectors, they just need the sexy headline that
I know
that everybody talks about on mainstream media and that reaches everybody and that 150 million people hear about in the first week. And that would be one of them. And the way that we can play this, as you mentioned, I don't want to hold something that's going to slow bleed for 6 months, but just have your game plan established where if this news hits, then I will do this.
Yeah. Well, it's I love obviously platforms like yourself that's putting out some really helpful information. You look at some of these mainstream networks and they're still talking about Aurora Cannabis. And with all due respect to Aurora, it's just like you got investors here that are consuming content 8 to 10 hours a day on their tablets, computers, and phones. And if you're not up to speed in this day and age, the whole media landscape and how it works, you're going to look dated in a matter of like 10 seconds, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a testament to, the people that, you can find anything that you want to learn on YouTube and social media. And that's a testament that there are people that know a lot more than the people that are on TV. And you are all an example of that as well.
CNBC is laughable. I mean, CNBC.
I didn't want to
I mean, the reverse Kramer ETF is real. If you actually follow it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm convinced that they're not intentionally. I mean, they don't ever talk about risk management or stop losses. So I know that they don't care about, helping individual people hold their money. It's
I had a power surge, but I mean, Cybin actually got stopped out of this week. I bought, it went down 10% and it's out. I'll get back in. I'll get back in sooner or later, but I mean, Cybin's a great name.
Yeah. I know a couple other people. We won't bring up any more charts, but we try to get to as many as possible. We had some people talk about. What was your thought on the reverse split Canopy?
Man, that thing is in trouble. It's just, and you also have to imagine how many bag holders there are, and that's when we had a lot of fun in the sector, both Canadian and US. It's blue sky breakout and it's price discovery, and there's no resistance.
Yeah,
and now you have something like CGC where. Every single level you get to, somebody's just getting back to break even. And that's a lot of overhead supply to work through. And so I just don't see anything bullish about that chart. Again, you get the headline, it's going to pop. There'll be a mini short squeeze, just like HHS. I mean, both Tilray and Canopy had big moves up and they did squeeze some shorts, but without that headline.
What'd you get out? What'd you get out of Canopy in 2018? Price wise,
good question.
I got out at 58.60.
That's pretty good.
I mean, I was the day before.
Okay, I got out 2 weeks before legalization, so not that close.
Yeah,
adjusted for dividend or for splits, it's now 592 was the high.
Yeah. Well, listen, this has been great. I really appreciate you taking the time. I hope people had some, really good information shared by you as always, which I'm sure they did. Anybody else want any questions, feel free to reach out. We'll reach out to Dan and make sure that we get everything answered for you. But this has been extremely helpful. You mentioned Cybin at the end, just to let our viewers know, we're going to be having CEO Doug Drysdale on next week during our live stream, which should be good. So we get an update from them. But in the meantime, enjoy the weekend. Stay warm. I know that you're, where are you located again, Dan?
Western North Carolina. It's snowing right now.
Really? What's the temperature?
25.
So Florida and North Carolina aren't too far, but man, the weather changes
They're
in a hurry,
very-
right?
They're so far.
Are they?
It's
They're
like,
like
it would take me
like-
10 hours to get to Florida.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
they're
guess.
like 15 or 18, 1600 miles apart.
Yeah.
I'm in the mountains. I got some elevation.
Nice. Well, listen, as usual, anybody wants to follow you at the Chart Guys on Twitter, anywhere else that they want to find on their YouTube channel is what again?
Yeah, the Chart Guys on YouTube. We have more content than you could know what to do with.
All right. Good stuff, Dan. Appreciate your time.
Thanks
Appreciate
for
it.
having me. See you next time.
All right. Take
Thanks.
care.
So one thing I do want to answer was, this is a pretty good question from Luis. Sorry if I butchered that. The fundamentals do matter. But if we're talking the cannabis space right now, Schedule 3 is going to be the biggest paradigm shift for the cannabis sector that they've seen fundamental-wise.
Yeah.
Companies that are over-levered in the Tier 2 and the Tier 3 space that we talk about, they're going to be able to leverage that free cash flow, pay off debt, restructure debt, and re-equitize companies to an extent.
Yeah.
So yes, fundamentals do matter. If you're looking at cannabis names, especially in the Tier 2, Tier 3 space that have debt, you want to be able to look at that debt and what the companies are actually doing to address it. Because then in a post-280E world, fundamentals absolutely will matter. And the amount of free cash the companies are throwing off compared to their debt and their debt to equity ratios are going to change after, assuming rescheduling happens. It is going to be a huge paradigm shift in that metric. So yes, they do matter. And you should be taking those into account.
That's a great explanation. Last thing I also want to touch on too, Sunday night at 8:00, mark it in your calendars. Yesterday, we had an in-depth conversation with attorney Matt Zorn from Yetter Coleman that basically was at the forefront of that lawsuit for the newly released documents pertaining to the HHS recommendation to the DEA, which we saw a lot of redaction, but really, really good interview. We asked him how this all got started, and he breaks down as to like why they redacted in the first place, and more importantly, what we can anticipate if we see rescheduling. And if we do, there's a lot more to it than what people are just thinking, how it's all going to be blue skies. A lot of work going to be done. But most importantly, we find out the story from Matt as to how this whole lawsuit was put together. But really good conversation, to say the least. That is Sunday night. We'll be posting that at 8:00. All right. Hope you had a good week. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and I'll check back in with you on Monday.
I will see everybody on Monday.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. And if you want to learn more about the emerging industries that we cover, then leave a comment below and let us know who you want us to interview, the questions you want asked, and the information that you want to learn. We want to hear from you. As usual, click on that bell for all notifications to get the latest information. Share this video with your network, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel, because we would not be